Welcome back to Flipside Guides on our segment God Moves, where we show that God moves the same as he did in the Bible days and the same he's moving today. We are here with Pastor Joe Jones at his church.
House of Mercy and Empowerment Worship Center, Longwood, Florida.
Yes, I actually sat through the service today. I was sat. I didn't sit. I stood. I clapped. It was really, really good. So if you are in Longwood, you should definitely check out this place. You said it was like a young man thing in your announcements.
Yes, our youth pastor Sean Bell is doing Boys Becoming Men mentoring.
Yeah.
Once a month at 4 p.m. here at the church. He mentors young men, takes them out. They do all kinds of fun stuff. They teach them about manhood, putting the foundation.
Yeah.
Or, most men like myself, we grew up without fathers.
Right.
And so situations like that really benefit young men. I wish I would have had something like that going on when I was growing up. It would have helped big time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we met real quick. We used to work together till I quit.
She's a quitter. She's quitting on us.
But before I did, he actually just became a warehouse manager where we worked at, and I found out that he was a pastor, that he started the church up here. We spoke a little bit, not too much biblical talk, but we had a couple biblical conversations.
Right.
And I was like, I would love to hear your testimony and how this all came to be. So
Absolutely.
we'll start off with the first question. How did you even get to know God, and not just like know him, like, yes, there is a God, but actually in him,
So I was born and raised in the church.
Mm-hmm.
What happens with people like me, we're born and raised in the church, but we don't really know God.
Right.
So we are brought to church, we're taught religion, but we don't know God. But you do retain the information.
Right.
And so I think I was about 19, 20 years old. I was into something I should not have been into. And I was pulled over by the police, and I had illegal substances with me, and they had a canine. And so I'm literally scared. I'm scared because I know all my life, my grandmother said, well, if you get caught with this, if you go to jail, that's your name, that's it.
Yeah.
So her words are coming to my mind. But I remember a song my mother used to make me sing. The words of the song said, Jesus is on the main. Tell them what you want. So I didn't know any scripture. I didn't know nothing. I just knew that God was listening. And so I prayed silently and prayed out loud. The police wanted to search the vehicle. They wanted to bring the dog. They said the dog gave them a positive signal from the car. And so they wanted to search the vehicle. So I'm sitting on the curb, and I prayed a sincere prayer to God on them. I said, if you bring me out of this, I'll give you my life. And the dog that gave them a positive signal was considered dysfunctional because they searched the vehicle and they could not find what it had.
Wow.
So when they let me go, they gave me a ticket for speeding, unlawful speeding. I took that ticket as my second chance.
Yeah.
I took that ticket as God's grace. I took the substance, I threw it out, and I gave my life to the Lord that weekend.
Wow.
That weekend at church, I gave my life to the Lord, and I've been with him ever since.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's actually really amazing, really powerful. Oh, that's a scary situation.
Yeah. Some of us don't walk in, some of us have to be drug in. I consider myself as one that had to be drug in.
Yeah.
But I had a plan for my life, so he wouldn't allow me to get caught up.
Right.
Out somewhere where I'm not supposed to be.
Now, what would you say, as I'm sure you've seen it, especially pastoring people? I'm sure not only do you see God working in your own life and your own families, but I believe and imagine that you would see it through the people that you pastor.
Yeah.
Probably, I think maybe your job might even be to show them how God is moving in their lives when they can't see it.
One of the difficult things about pastoring is that you haven't mastered what you're teaching.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to live what you're teaching. And so what happens is when you tell a person that God is going to make a way for them, you still have to believe that same God's going to make a way for you.
Gotcha.
The world is so hard on pastors because we have to live in the same conditions that they live in, but we're the ones who are giving them the good news.
Right.
So it's my job to preach, but nobody looks down upon the lay member who makes the missteps. Everybody looks down on the pastor because he's the one that's charged to deliver the mail.
Right.
So it's I've seen God move, and one thing that I've benefited from in my life and ministry is that I feel like I am the most, more than anybody I know. I think I've received more of God's grace than anybody.
Mhm.
This helps me to be graceful with anybody.
Mhm.
People come in my church and they come from all kinds of lifestyles, all kinds of situations. I don't look down on them
Right.
because I know where God has brought me from.
Yeah.
I know what has done and still is doing in my life. So I look at it as if it is my responsibility to give them the same thing that God gave me,
Mhm.
which is grace.
Which is great.
Absolutely.
I love it. So doing this segment, you didn't have to. We didn't know each other very, very long. So I appreciate it. But I would say what compelled you to say yes, and what message would you want anybody to know? Like you have this, all 10 followers. I'm just kidding. No, I'm kidding. If you're watching this, I appreciate you. But what would you want anybody to see this, to hear, to know about God?
I want them to know that God is not too far.
Ah,
He's not far away from anybody. The the moments in my life, we make the mistake sometimes to determine that God feels the way people feel.
ooh, can you elaborate?
So when people know that you've done this, you've experienced that, people look at you a certain way.
Yeah.
What people can't fathom, what people don't understand is that God looks at you through the lens of love, no matter what. And so my desire for your followers, for anybody to know that God is near.
Yeah.
He's closer than we think. We are one yes away from God.
Ooh,
We are one yes away. All we got to do is tell God yes. And Jesus said it in the Bible. He said, if anyone lets me in, I'll come in. And that speaks of all walks of life, all conditions. There's no limitations on anyone. People put limitations on us because they feel like if you've gone this far, if you've done this, that you're unreachable. That's not the truth.
right.
That's not the truth. There's a whole lot of people staying away from God, staying away from the church because they feel like they've gone too far. And so I want my message to the world is that you have not gone too far. You can always come back.
Yes. Oh, I love it. And so you had no idea, but I did a February God moves with someone. And I was like, asked the same question, what would you want them to know? And she was like, how tangible God is.
Yes.
And so, y'all, if you saw it last month and you see it this month, I promise you, these people are not related.
Right.
So if you hear the same message from different people, which is that God is near,
Absolutely.
then open your ears. And I think most importantly, open your hearts to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He's definitely there.
Yeah. So, can you talk a little bit more about just like the closeness that you had with God? Like when is the time that you've leaned on him and that he's moved probably in a way you didn't expect?
Well, my grandmother died in 2003.
Mm-hmm.
She was always my go-to. When things went
The rock.
wrong, I called her. I need you to pray about this because God would do it for her.
Yeah.
He would do it for me, but he would do it for her. So if I wanted a car, a job, anything like that, I called her and she said, okay, I'll pray about it. And it would happen.
Yeah.
When she died, I had to get to know God for myself.
Right.
And I must say, from 2003 to where we are now in 2023, I have enjoyed this journey. It amazes me how many times you can read. I preached today from John chapter 11.
Yeah.
You heard me.
Yeah.
It amazes me that I can read that 20 years later and still learn something fresh.
Yeah.
Still learn something new. So I've enjoyed the journey. It gets rough, but I really enjoy the journey of actually getting to know God. Intimacy with God is the most amazing thing that I think anybody will ever experience. I have really enjoyed my journey,
Mhm.
just studying the word, going through life. And like I said, it gets tough. You have to really wait on God. And sometimes that waiting is painful because you don't know, but you can always depend on the character of God,
Right.
even when you cannot see the person of God. you know, so I remind myself all the time that even though I can't trace him, I can still trust him.
Yes. Oh, that's a good quote
I
right
can still
there.
trust him.
I love it. There's oh, when I talk about waiting on God, man, the impatience of people and the waiting on God, that's where I feel like a lot of people
Yeah,
are like, okay, he ain't here and
Right.
he ain't coming.
right.
Because I think of there's this guy in the Bible, and I remember hearing the story. I don't know it that well, but there's someone that was promised he was going to see Jesus.
Mhm.
Oh boy, got old, gray hair,
That's right.
and but he did. He
Yeah.
did see him before he died,
That's right.
and I just had to think like, well, my me being impatient, and I would just be straight up. I don't want to be gray before I have to see his promise come true.
Absolutely.
But I think about it, and I think probably that moment that he's waited for his entire life, and when it finally happened,
Right.
was probably one of the most fulfilling moments in
Absolutely.
his life to see like it was real. I hung on. It's true.
One thing I learned about God, he doesn't make mistakes.
Yeah.
This is not the first church I pastored.
Okay.
I pastored 10 years prior to this. If I would have tried to do this 10 years ago, it wouldn't have worked.
The
If I would have tried, no, to start this church.
okay.
If I would have tried to start this church 10 years ago, it wouldn't have worked because I'm not the same person.
Yeah.
I needed 10 years. And the church I pastored, I lived here my whole life.
Hmm.
The church I pastored was 2 hours away. I drove 2 hours there, 2 hours back on Sunday, 2 hours there, 2 hours back on Wednesday.
Right.
I needed all 10 of those years. I needed every mile traveled to become the person that I am now.
Wow.
And a lot of people that wait on God. The truth of the matter is, we say that term ignorantly. It's not God that we're waiting on, it's our character development that we're waiting on. It's a lot of us that we ask God for something that we don't have the discipline to carry. Yeah, I would be an irresponsible father to put my 5-year-old behind the wheel of my vehicle
Right.
because she doesn't have the maturity, the ability, nor the wherewithal, the capacity to handle what she's carrying. God would be an irresponsible father to give us our heart's desire when our character and our level of maturity is not ready for it.
Yeah.
So when we ask God for something, He'll put us through training
Mhm.
and put us through characterization build up and all that stuff like that, so that when He does that, I see how quick things have happened because this we just celebrated our 1 year anniversary 2 weeks ago.
Right.
When I started this church, I didn't have nothing. I had a broken heart and a Bible. All of this, you're looking at nearly $30,000 worth of church stuff. And I did it in 4 months.
Wow.
We moved in here in 4 months. We were renting someone else's building. Um, and we started this church on January 30th of 2022. We had the keys to this building and all this stuff was here in May of 2022. God did all of this. And I began to say to myself, man, I should have done this a long time ago. But the Holy Spirit told me you could.
Hmm.
That's why God wouldn't allow you to do it. I needed every mile traveled to Vero Beach. I needed all 10 of those years to prepare me for this moment.
Gotcha.
And God is like the old cooks, the old cooks. They didn't have timers like we do. They just had stoves. They knew the smell.
Yeah.
They knew the look. And so they didn't pull the cake out of the oven a minute sooner. They didn't let it stay a minute late. My grandmother used to go to the stove and she used to look at it and say it's ready. And it would be perfect.
Yeah.
And that's how God is. He doesn't pull us out too soon. And he doesn't let us go too early. He waits until we're ready. And then he gives us that moment. And you see all the people that were here this morning. If I would have mishandled the moment and mishandled the timing, where would they be?
Yeah.
You know, if I hadn't have done this, where would they be now? If I would have done this at the wrong time, where would they be?
Right.
So you have to, when you're dealing with God, you got to go with God's timing. Realize I'm not waiting on God. Maybe God is preparing me
Mhm.
for that moment. A lot of people want marriage. You're married, I'm married. A lot of people just want a wedding. You know this.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? A lot of people want wedding. A lot of people just want a beautiful wedding. They don't want marriage. Because when you start listening to a talk, it's like, no, you're not ready for marriage. Because I had a young person tell me, I'm ready. I want God to send me a husband, but I'm not going to deal with this. I'm not going to deal with that. I said, don't get married. I said, don't do it because you're going to deal with everything
Yeah.
that you just said you're not going to deal with.
Yeah.
Because that's what matters. We got to learn to love. I know how to love me. I had to learn how to love her
Right.
and not lose me at the same time.
Yeah.
That's what married couples have to learn how to do. But they don't realize that you're not just going to find somebody and it's going to be happily ever after. You're going to have to learn
Oh yeah.
how to love yourself all over again while loving a man or a
Right.
woman.
Right.
And it's difficult for some people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will agree to that. I feel like I have to pause and give a shout out to the grandmas out in the world because listen, I guess I still need to encourage that if you are someone who's praying for your child
Mhm.
or your grandchild or somebody that just seems so far out of reach, but you love them so much,
Yeah.
that prayers don't expire.
My mother was told I would be in prison. Statistics show that men who were raised without a father in the home are often thrown into prison. My mother's watching the manifestation of her prayers. She sits in that one chair every Sunday.
Your mama said that?
I was her in that corner. And she was up on the front row. She comes here, but she's literally watching the manifestation of her prayers.
Yeah.
When she was pregnant, I was supposed to die.
Mm.
They didn't think I would make time. And her pastor told her that your son would preach. And imagine being told your son's going to preach, but then your son goes to the streets.
Right.
And then you kind of feel, but she kept praying. She kept praying. And so now what she's looking at is a manifestation of her unwillingness to give up,
Wow.
her unwillingness to let go. And I'm 39. You see how long she had to wait. She had to wait a long time. She didn't give up.
Yeah.
She kept praying.
Yeah.
So grandmothers, what would we be without them?
Yeah.
Right.
So, is there any other God move that you would like to share today?
I just want to share with everybody that I believe this is my mission for the world. The name of this church is the House of Mercy and Empowerment Worship Center. And the scripture that is Hosea 6:6.
Mhm.
That is the story of my life. And I see and I learned a lot about God through that. He says, I desire mercy and not sacrifice.
Mhm.
A lot of us, we make sacrifices to the Lord and all this other stuff. He desires mercy. And I want the world to know that what God has done for me, He's been merciful.
Right.
I'm not sitting here today because I deserve anything. I'm sitting here today because He gave me everything. And He has been absolutely positively merciful.
Yeah.
If I could keep a record, or if God has record, I'd love to see how much mercy I've taken. I would just love to just for kicks and giggles.
Yeah.
Like God, can you just show me how much? Because you know how we at the job we chart the bleach.
Yeah.
I'd love to see how much mercy I've racked up
Yeah.
as it relates to other people because I I grew up in the way. I knew the way. I went the opposite way intentionally.
Yeah.
You know, I was irritated with church because I never had a Sunday where I didn't have to go to church.
Mhm.
So when I turned 18, I had a choice. I mean, I enjoyed Sunday morning just not going, but I didn't stay out long.
Yeah.
The Bible says that you train a child up in the way he should go. When he gets older, he will not depart from it. And I'm at a point now. I don't regret my upbringing. I love it.
Yeah.
God has done something for me that I'm proud of. and I'm happy to be who I am. This move, this is who I am.
Yeah,
What I'm doing now, this is who I am. This is what I was created to do. I'm happy.
yeah,
I'm happy. And I encourage everybody, all of your followers, find where God has intended you to be. A very frustrated soul is somebody who's walking out of purpose.
mm. It's true. There's, I said this before, but there's a thing, oh my goodness. Or the King Solomon, I think he's the richest man and he had vision, right? And so the verse is, where there is no vision, the people perish.
Absolutely.
So you do, I guess, one last question, and just because you brought up such a really good point, but how do you find it if you're like, I'm walking out of purpose, I'm frustrated, there's more to life than this, I don't know what's going on, everything I do, just, I pray, I don't hear anything. I mean, there is a frustration in that. Where do you go?
Everybody needs a mentor.
Yeah.
Everybody needs a pastor. And I must say that I have my pastors, he's been my pastor since I was 9 years old. I'll be 40 on Tuesday.
Oh,
Yeah. You need someone who you trust the God in them.
mhm,
Not just trust them, but you trust the God in them. You need somebody to speak in your life and someone whose voice that you trusted. Since I was 9 years old, I've had the same pastor. And I've been able to trust what God is saying through him
mhm,
because I couldn't always hear God myself.
mhm.
And so I think mentorship, the Bible said we have not many fathers. I think mentorship, this generation has lost mentorship. You need somebody who can, who you trust to correct you.
Yeah.
I have a married couple that I'm going to be counseling. One of the first things I asked them, I said, "Do you want to be married?" They both said, "Yeah." I said, "Now, do you trust me so where I can correct you without you disconnecting?" You need somebody in your life that will point you in the direction and then tell you you're on the wrong path.
Mhm.
And then you don't get offended and run away. And I think that's what's happened to me. I've had people in my life where I trusted the God and then they told me you were wrong. This is what you need to be doing. Those people are very, very outside of God. Um, those people are very instrumental into where I am now. I would be where I'm not, where I am. And the Bible said that a fool shuns wisdom. And that's what the Bible said. I didn't say,
Yeah.
the Bible said a fool shuns wisdom. When you have people in your life, my grandmother said this to me because I'm a boy who grew up without his dad.
Mhm.
It's not that I didn't know where my dad was. My dad just didn't want to be around like that. He
Yeah.
had other stuff going on. So I grew up without my dad. I was told when I was a young man, there are going to be men that come in your life and waste their time.
Oh.
And waste their time. And I've had a man to teach me how to install floors. I've had a man to teach me how to install windows. I've had a man to teach me how to do ministry. And I've embraced it. I've embraced it because I wasn't paying them a thing, but they invested in me. So to answer your question, I would advocate for mentorship. Find somebody that you trust, that you have a spiritual relationship with, that they can speak in your life. We can't hang out Sunday night, Monday night, and be best friends because familiarity brings contempt.
Yep.
You're not going to trust the God in me, but you need somebody that you trust to hear God on your behalf and then speak to you what God is saying. And so I advocate for mentorship. Everybody needs a pastor. This is an old fashioned, this is old school, but it's the truth. Everybody needs a pastor. He said, I will give you shepherds after my own heart, and they will feed you with knowledge and understanding. And so we all need that. We all need that. So that's what I tell the young lady that's trying to find her way. Find a shepherd. The young man is trying to find his way, find a shepherd. Pastors are scrutinized heavily, but they're needed.
Yeah.
They are needed. And the ones that are scrutinized, we all fall into some sort of scrutiny. We're not perfect. We all make mistakes. Some of us aren't making mistakes. Some of us are just doing things we shouldn't be doing. But everyone needs a pastor. Everyone needs a pastor. You need two things in the world. You need God and you need a shepherd. And then that right, and then you need good education. My prayer for my children is that after I'm gone, that they would find a shepherd that would guide them, and also that they're not sitting here listening to dad, but that they're listening to God. I'm afraid that beautiful young lady back there is not sitting here listening to husband, but she's listening to God.
All right, well, thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
And again, guys, remember that God, same God back then, same God today, he moves. He moves for
Absolutely.
him, he moves for me, and he moves for you.